In 1975, we were 6,000 people. 25 years later, we numbered more than 16,000. We needed jobs and housing. We needed to build our economy. For our Grand Chief, that meant it was time to try a new approach in our relations with Canada and Quebec.
I myself was looking forward towards a resolution of the issues between the Crees and Quebec, and trying to find a way of how we can deal with those and how we can work together and bring respect to the rights and fulfillment of obligations by Quebec.
Well, we knew that there was no way we would accept the status quo in terms of governance and natural resource development. We had to look for alternatives, and the relationship that we had with Quebec and Canada was not sustainable for the Cree.
Grand Chief Ted Moses saw this as an opportunity to move ahead, to get away from the period of stalemate, to get away from the area of confrontation, and move on to the area of economic development.
While we were looking for ways to improve our communities and our relations with the government, Hydro-Quebec wanted to build another hydro project.
But at the time, we were facing what was developing to be a crunch in terms of energy needs, and there hadn't been much development during the 90s, so we were getting to a point where things were looking pretty tight.
Well, Hydro-Quebec had a list of projects in the James Bay Northern Quebec Agreement, starting with the Le Grand Complex. They had Great Whale River, they had the NBR, and a whole series of other projects.
The issue here was, well, what do we do with all of these projects that are set out in the James Bay Agreement? And the Quebec government says, well, we're really not interested in building anything else than a smaller project, which was the EM1 project and the so-called Rupert Diversion project.
We knew that the idea of even starting a project without having some buy-in from the people on the ground was just going to lead to another great whale type of episode.
And rather than approaching the Grand Council and the Cree Nation, they approached the communities, and they went and spoke to those communities who would be affected.
Some communities, unfortunately, were kind of moving away from, let's say, the collectivity of the Crees. We're starting to move away from the Grand Council of the Crees, wanting to strike it out on their own.
In the end, it required Cree consent, and only the Grand Council could give that consent. Our main objective was to find a mechanism to implement the James Bay Northern Quebec Agreement. We wanted to ensure that there would be Cree consent on any resource development. We wanted to be part of development. We wanted our people to benefit from employment in the communities.
People wanted to see and feel and touch what governments had promised. They wanted to see tangible results. They wanted to see benefits. They wanted to see opportunities. And where the Crees are, basically in charge of the development in their communities.
The meeting ended with Saint-Gelais saying, well, I'll think about this and I'll get back to you. And we were I was anyways, convinced that, I had a lot of doubt that he'd ever come back.
But Jean Saint-Gelais did come back, and he had the blessing of the Premier to continue the talks. The main question was, would Quebec finally implement our treaty? And what would they ask for in return? We knew there would be a price to pay.
The proposal that was made, and it came from the Cree side, basically, is that we're never going to agree on this. It's going to be impossible to agree as to what the James Bay Agreement contains in terms of socioeconomic rights. The only solution possible is to agree that we will never agree, and that you give the Crees the responsibility themselves, rather than having the governments doing it for them and implementing the treaty. You give the Crees the financial resources to do it themselves, and they'll decide what their priority is.
When they made the proposal that, okay, we'll live up to the James Bay Northern Quebec Agreement, prepared to put large resources into it, or we want one thing in exchange.
New players, a new deal, more than 25 years after the first James Bay Agreement. The signatures put an end to decades of bitter legal and public relations battles between Quebec and the Cree.
This agreement marks a turning point where the Crees and Quebec have decided to put the weight of history behind them and accept the challenge of resolving our differences in a peaceful manner so that we may work together for a stronger future for both of us.
So the next morning we did the press conference and announced to the world that there was this deal, all the Paix de Brave, and we have an agreement in principle. And it was $3.5 billion given to the Crees for over the next 50 years, and in exchange for one Rupert diversion. And Quebec would honor their obligations. Not only honor the obligations, but transfer the obligations back to the Cree government. Never in the history of the world had such a large amount of money or resources given to an Aboriginal group.
As soon as the agreement was signed, the leaders boarded a Dash 8 and flew to Waskaganish to present the agreement in principle.
There's no way you can go to Waskaganish without seeing the river, you know? And you look down, you see it, and, you know, and you just don't know what it'll become. You know, of course, we had all that experience with the complex, the La Grande complex, you know, and even today, I mean, still people are still feeling the impacts of that. And here we have, you know, another river. The only thing I could think of was, well, how are the trappers going to react?
Only a few months earlier, our people had been protesting against the diversion of the Rupert River. Now, with the new and better deal in their pocket, the Cree leaders were asking them to reconsider. It would not be easy.
The spirit of the understanding is that both parties are going to put the past behind them, meaning neither party is going to abandon their positions on the JBNQA or on Aboriginal rights. In other words, we're not settling or ending the claims of the Crees and the positions of the Crees related to Aboriginal.
one taso we are on the Tagani, we are on the mountain, Motanga Beji, Tagagia, Yakanga, you should say, Tech, which I want time date on you. You is for it. You're going to Mount Nathan, but I mean, I need to Mount Nathan here, though. But everything I write stuck there. Could get the books, make another CB Oscar and CB. Ched when I stay him ched again here, and got younger. I'm still your Mount Nathan. So, Joe Grant. There's not storm ched to go on couch and do his so there you are. Mugger Mishkad and Square about. I was your got you put start on. Schumacher again, he will go in with town. Back on, everyone was there. She won't tell you, it's an accident.
There was a question that was asked many times over the course of the consultations, you know, and that question is, you know, are you willing to allow these projects to go through, to destroy your land?
The final decision was left to the people. Each community held a referendum on whether or not to approve the proposed new relationship agreement. In the end, 70% of the voters said yes, and all the chiefs of the community stood together in supporting the deal.
Whichever side that you're going to be on, I respect the wishes of the people, and that's what happened. So, I wasn't going to vote against it because I have the mandate. The mandate comes from the people, and so I have no other choice but to support it.
Congratulations. Admire your courage. We're very happy. So we're going to sign in Waskaganish on the 7th of February. We are here today to sign an agreement that represents an extraordinary evolution and highly significant advance in the relationship between the Cree people of the USC and the government of Quebec. Our agreement today brings to life the compact that we entered into 26 years ago with Quebec when we signed the James Bay and Northern Quebec Agreement.
Le grand chef Ted Moses a parlé de la paix des braves. Il avait bien raison, car plusieurs doutaient que cette réconciliation puisse vraiment se concrétiser. Ainsi, la signature d'une entente finale entre le gouvernement du Québec et le Grand Conseil des Cris ouvre la voie à une nouvelle ère de collaboration et à une véritable relation de nation à nation entre les Cris et le Québec.
One of the greatest challenges of being a leader in the North is finding opportunities, creating opportunities for your people. And you cannot do that alone as a Grand Chief. That, you have to convince other people to do that. Above all, gain the confidence and support of the people, because they're the ones that have to live with it for the future.
Construction on EM1 started almost immediately. But before work could begin on the Rupert, there had to be an environmental and social assessment. Canada, Quebec, and the Crees would each have to approve the final report.
We were doing this together with the Crees in the context of an agreement that was going to have the Crees involved from the conceptual phase to the actual execution phase and the environmental review process as it goes out over the years. And there were no guarantees. This was really going to be about putting this project forward and trusting the environmental review process and accepting what the result of that environmental review process was going to be.
While our new relationship with Quebec was being put to the test out on the land, we had unfinished business with the federal government. Canada was still refusing to fully implement our treaty.
Canada was very surprised that the Crees had made an agreement with Quebec because of the nature of the very acrimonious relationship which had developed between Quebec and the Crees. So that was certainly a big surprise for them. But I think a bigger surprise was the nature of the agreement itself, the actual scope of the agreement and the approach.
$3.5 billion had been given to the Crees as a result of La Paix des Braves. So obviously, Ottawa was very much aware of the amount involved, and the Crees were aware equally that if the Quebec government had been able to grant them that much money, a good sum would obviously come from Ottawa.
So therefore, the argument with Canada was, hey, Quebec has now come up with their 50% of their fulfillment of obligations through La Paix des Braves. Now you have to come up with with the balance, with the other 50%.
When you have got a bit of a stick, and they had a bit of a stick, which was not just simply, by the way, resource development. It was their feeling for their homeland, where they had grown up since time immemorial. That's immensely powerful, and it's very hard for a government to counteract that, especially when they speak with the strength of will that they showed.
With the Paix des Braves in our pocket and over $2 billion in claims against Canada before the courts, we now had leverage to get Canada to take us seriously at the negotiating table.
Did the Paix des Braves have an effect on Canada? Absolutely. In fact, when I was in office, we took one look at it and said, well, you know, we didn't say why, we said why not?
They don't know how to solve these problems we have in the Aboriginal world, especially in the North. So we always go to the table with the issue, problem, and we table the solution. Then we negotiate the solution with that's how it worked with Democratia.
I really didn't think our chances were very good, and I hesitated before accepting the mandate. But what convinced me at the end to accept the mandate is that I realized that the federal government was really determined, was serious.
The Paix des Braves certainly set the bar for the negotiations. The Cree came prepared. In fact, they already had a draft agreement, so we didn't start from a blank page.
In negotiations, we like to control the pen, as they say, because in negotiations, our Cree perspective is we don't go to the table to make a complaint. We go to the table and table a problem and a solution at the same time. So this is how you make progress.
If I do, damned if I don't.